Good morning. I'm told that you could at one point hear the dawn chorus, which I was not expecting to find on a rooftop terrace right in the heart of London this morning. There is AstroTurf around me on this rooftop, which was convincing me for a moment that I could have been on a lawn somewhere. The deck chairs are out, people are going to work. It was incredible actually just coming into work this morning, coming to this location around sort of 4 o'clock. The night buses going past me as I wandered here, full with people either on their way to work, going home from work. It just shows how much of a busy, economically producing, if that's the term, place London is. And you can just see around me this morning, whether it's from BT Tower all through the City of London with the gherkin and the walkie-talkie in the Shard across the Canary Wharf. Whatever happens in these Brexit negotiations has an impact on everybody somehow. So to remind you what went on yesterday, Theresa May has said if her Brexit deal gets through Parliament at the third attempt, she will resign as Prime Minister. So that was a pretty big deal, considering she said she wanted to stay on a bit longer than that, depending, of course, if a deal gets done. So lots of ifs and buts around that. Then there was these loads of votes that were held last night, designed to show what Parliament wanted next in the Brexit process. There were 8 options, ranging from no deal to revoking Article 50 and effectively starting either the process again or not leaving the European at all. None of those were actually backed by a majority, but some were a little bit stronger than others. Customs Union, second referendum, they'll generate a bit more debate. But what do businesses make of it? Well, I've got a few people from the world of business here in London with me this morning. I've got Ian Anderson, who's Executive Chairman of Cicero Group, Simon Lancaster, who's the founder and Chief Exec of SJL Insurance Services, located in the Lloyd's of London houses, which houses around 80 member syndicates, of which Simon is one. And Shanti Kellerman's back with me, Senior Portfolio Manager at Coutts. Morning to you all. Ian, just kicks off. Well, explain a little bit, Cicero Group, communications, PR, is media, is that kind of thing?
I prefer to call it lobbying. Most of my business earnings are around lobbying, and we work for the people around us. We work for city institutions, asset managers, fund managers, insurers, the long-term investors in this country, and they're still really, really worried.
So how much lobbying has there been from those folks through the likes of you to the British government about what they want?
So huge amounts. I mean, ever since David Cameron stood up in the Bloomberg building here in the heart of the city and said we're going to have an in-out referendum, people around here got very concerned because most of them use the European passport in order to access the European market. They've used and made London as their big hub for trading into Europe, and they're really concerned about a no-deal outcome. In fact, they really still, right now, are looking on the UK Parliament saying, if you can't get your act together, frankly, we're going to take more and more out of this great centre.
Do you feel like that lobbying has worked to a certain extent, though? Because there's been certain things we've heard from the European Union about the relationship with the financial services here in the UK that makes things a lot smoother than maybe for a lot of other sectors around the UK that will have still have major concerns.
So, I mean, there's been a lot of lobbying. There's a big understanding of the impact that financial services has on the UK economy. It's our biggest export earner. I mean, my issue is the problem for certainly the past 2 years, is we've been stuck on a conversation about goods rather than a conversation about services. And I still find that very worrying, and I'm still saying that to politicians because 75% of our economy is services, not goods.
Simon, can I bring you in on that? SJL Insurance Services. Yes. Clues in the name a bit, but obviously everybody knows insurance is, the name of the game really is providing a service to people wherever it might be. Do you feel a bit better now, whatever might happen, about the future than maybe 2 years ago when the financial services industry seemed to have major concerns about losing large chunks of market share and not being able to access certain markets?
I do, yeah. I certainly agree that we need to get a deal over the line, and I think the City of London, and particularly insurance, needs certainty and clarity so that we can move on. I'd certainly agree on that. But I do think that we haven't seen the movement of jobs and assets away from the City of London that was initially projected. I mean, looking at jobs, the projections initially were 500,000 jobs going. I think we've only seen between 2,000 and 7,000 jobs. So whilst that's obviously regrettable, I don't think it's as bad as first feared.
When you say assets moving, not as bad as feared, because figures that people have put together, that it's £1 trillion worth of assets have moved out of the UK. Can you explain what that actually means in your world?
Well, it's monetary assets being shifted to institutions in Europe, mainly because of passporting and things like that.
Is that almost just like a switching of a bank account or a share account or something like that?
But I think a lot of that has been caused by the impasse in Westminster. I think people need clarity, and if we can get clarity and hopefully the deal over the line, we can get that clarity, and I'd like to think a lot of those assets could move back.
Shanti, just for investors, what difference does it make about the relationship between the European Union and the UK? Because we had those 8 options yesterday. For you, as a portfolio manager, does it make much difference to you which one of those, if there were one of those that was a final outcome, it happened to be?
So, as if you're investing, you want to see economic growth, because that tends to lead to companies growing as well. So we'd want something in an ideal world that will keep trade flowing. And even if we leave in one way, we can have other deals. I think with the City of London, there's tremendous network effects from having accountancy, advisory services, legal services, and that's why it's tended to be a hub. And it's very hard to break that and have people move mass amounts of jobs, because you simply don't have that great cluster of services available in other places.
Yeah, because a lot of people said the City of London is robust enough to handle the UK leaving the European Union. Is that playing out?
I think cities, we're doing our best, right? So we've got to be prepared for the worst case scenario, to be able to make sure all the money still goes through customer bank accounts, that businesses have access to capital that they can invest. And so I think with business, it's about, we see our clients, they're just focused on making sure things work regardless of what happens.
Ian, your clients in the world of communications and lobbying, what are they focusing on now, do you think? We had those 8 indicative votes yesterday, Prime Minister potentially leaving. But in terms of what businesses in financial services are now saying, they're putting all their money in to get the government to do what they want to do, what area is it?
Yeah, so, to be really clear, a lot of the big businesses have already taken their decision. Whether or not they were going to open in Dublin, open in Frankfurt, open in Paris, they've been able to do all this. The people I'm most concerned about right now are some of the SMEs in the financial services sector, and actually the SMEs in the wider economy. They don't have the muscle to make all these plans. They've got, frankly, some of their fingers crossed behind their back to see whether or not the politicians can work it out. And at the minute, the politicians can't work it out.
It's an interesting world, that, I guess, in lobbying, because you say they don't have the muscle. Does that effectively mean they don't have the money to pay the likes of you guys to lobby government the way the big businesses do?
So, that is right. The big businesses can afford the management consultancies too. I am really now much, much more concerned about some of those smaller businesses that are literally just trying to work out whether or not the politicians can compromise. And that's what we need right now. This idea of a kind of a pure Brexit is an absolute fantasy land. Everybody now needs to compromise so that we get a good deal and we don't get a cliff edge.
I've had a few messages in from listeners this morning. No deal. Clearly the best option, as to put up with further negotiation. Faux pas for several more years could be even more painful than a no-deal deal, says Dickie in Poole. Not quite sure what that means. I'm sure it'll be on the table in Parliament next week. Why do people say nobody knows what's going on? Are they on another planet? Do they live in a box? So much for the era of communication, computers and radio and television news. Parliament has no idea about democracy. We will leave without a deal, says Dave. Alan says, I'm off to visit my daughter in 2 weeks, who's studying business studies for a semester at the Uni of New Mexico in Albuquerque. I hope that when I get back, we have eventually left the European Union. We can start to take advantage of the trade opportunities rather than become experts on Erskine May. I'm still not sure how we pronounce that yet. When we look, Simon, at the insurance industry, just bring it back down to people who are literally using insurance day to day, is there still anything that could drastically change for them, either in the event of no deal or any of those other options that MPs were talking about yesterday?
No, I think the insurance sector is strong. We've grown 40% since the Brexit vote of 2016, and we've become a Lloyd's broker, enabling us to trade globally, and invested in opening a City of London office, and we've doubled our number of staff.
Because you've got a big Worcester base as well.
Yes, yeah.
What's the world like out of London compared to London at the minute?
Well, we insure any business in the UK, and we're seeing lots of businesses starting up, lots of businesses growing, so we haven't seen the effects of Project Fear yet. I do agree that we need to get a deal. I think no deal's not perfect, but what I don't want to see is second referendums and extensions and delay, because I think what we need is clarity and certainty so that business and the country can move on and make a success of it.
Is the mood any different in Worcester to what's going on in Brexit in the business world to the mood in London? Because you've got a foot in both areas.
I think there's quite a few people that are actually switching like me. I initially voted Remain and have switched to wanting to leave on a good deal, but wanting to leave now.
So if there was another referendum, what would you vote?
I would vote to leave with a deal now, because I think extending and not leaving is just prolongs the problem in my view, and business needs clarity and needs to move on and make a success of it.
Ian, just finally, we've been spending weeks and weeks Wake Up to Money travelling all around the country, and it just occurs to me that the small distiller or the small manufacturer in Northern Ireland just doesn't have what you have here. You're on the doorsteps of Westminster with tons of money going in. Is that a fair setup?
No, I mean, I come back to this point. The people I'm most concerned about right now are the SMEs, because, frankly, all they can do, as I said to you a minute ago, is cross their fingers and hope that our politicians can compromise. All of us now have to hope that our politicians can compromise and get that good deal.
There you go. Crossing fingers, Louise. That's the conclusion, I think, from Wake Up to Money this morning, one we could have made over the last few weeks.
And the expression I found, it was the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Rather ironically, I think we are living in interesting times.
A blessing, not a curse. That's it from Wake Up to Money. Breakfast up next.
Thank you very much, Sean and Louise. Much more from Sean throughout the programme, of course. Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday morning and it's 6 o'clock.
First for news.